Perfect. So welcome everybody to our new VCA residency class. Today we have Esmay with us. She has been a mentor for VCA till the first cohort. Correct me if I'm wrong, Esmay.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
she's the marketing manager at SuperRare, and today she'll guide us through the beautiful and intricate world of social media and branding in the NFT space. So thank you so much for being here. And as always, guys, feel free to interact with us using the talking or using the chat. So I'll be there if you need anything. Thank you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, as always, and it's great to meet you all too. So I'm going to talk you guys through some kind of principles of branding yourself as an artist and promoting yourself as an artist. And then we usually do an exercise at the end around something called brand pillars, which I'll explain more of in a minute. But just to give you a bit of background, so I work at SuperRare, but I have been an artist for the last 10 years and spent a lot of time trying to promote my music and art on various Web2 platforms, such as Twitch and Instagram and Twitter and all the rest of it. So I know how it feels to be an artist trying to make sure that you're expressing yourself in an authentic way, but also trying to reach people and reach the right kind of people. And I've spent a lot of time trying to hone that. And it does take time and it takes patience, and it also takes, sometimes needing a break from it all. So we'll talk through all of that today. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you all. I can see Ines in here as well. Hi, Ines. I think we met in person.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, coffee friend.
Yeah. So yeah, let's dive into this, and we will do an exercise at the end. So this is a workshop mainly focused on artist promotion, and really the first kind of part of this will be looking at fundamentals. So how you build an online presence. It's really hard because you're basically used to making art, and that's really what you should be spending most of your time doing more than anything else. But online presence has never been as important or as accessible to artists. And it's important to remember that at the heart of it, rather than thinking about it as promotion, it's kind of all about connecting as authentically about your artistic expression. And I've always found that if I see it as a way to connect to followers or collectors that my art really resonated with, that really helped kind of reframe how I did things. So having said that, you have to remember there's a lot of noise out there. So as well as it being about connecting with people, one way to cut through the noise is consistency. The algorithms on Twitter favor that, but so do your audience. So if they see you each day or week, they'll get to know you and your art, and your expression will become top of mind for them. Another thing to mention is about engagement versus followers. So obviously a big following can be great for opening up promotional doors, and it gives a perception of success, but you don't need a big following to earn a living from your art. An engagement with a smaller following can often be just as fruitful as a big following. So something to keep in mind as you are kind of growing your audience and your collector base. So in this workshop today, we're going to cover content as well as engagement, and both are important for the algorithms, but also for building that connection that I mentioned. We're also going to cover your personal brand, which is kind of how to see or think of yourself in that way. And then, focus on kind of content, what do you post, how much do you post, what platforms, how you engage with your collectors, and then also a mention on mental health and burnout, because effectively as artists today, you're being artists and creating and putting all your focus and energy into that, but you're also kind of running a business and promoting yourselves, and it can be rather exhausting to do both of those. So you just need to look after yourself at the same time. So building your personal brand. So this is, it's sometimes hard to see yourself as a brand, but it really helps in knowing what content you're going to create, where you're going to create it, how you're going to put it out in the world, and it can really channel a lot of messaging. So some guidelines for doing this. Keeping it authentic is probably like the best advice I could possibly focus on. To make it easier, I would think about it as not building your brand necessarily, but thinking about how you can amplify your voice as well. And keeping it authentic and true to yourself will make it easier for you to continue to make content, and generally your audience will start gravitating towards it. People, I think, are very savvy online. But having said that, authentic can mean so many things. So if it's creating an alter ego that's part of your artwork, that can be authentic. Maybe it's talking directly about your opinions. Maybe it's, addressing the camera and being, very face on to people, but maybe it's about being totally anonymous. So whichever feels right and authentic to you, it's kind of part of your personal brand and amplifying your voice. So we'll do an exercise at the end for this, but if you can start kind of ruminating it in your head, a really helpful way to access this is to think of brand pillars. So 3 to 5 things that you and your artwork stand for, and that they're unique to you, and again, authentic to you and your artwork. There are no rules here, but and it's worth saying that this process can take a while to hone. It took me months, sometimes years. I changed as my art changed, my brand pillars changed as well. But writing these pillars down, or kind of like things that you stand for and things that are important to you, will help with all the content that you make online, writing tweets and promoting yourself across all these different platforms. So it's a really helpful exercise. And yeah, we'll do a workshop at the end. But if you want to start thinking about what those might be, please do. So a note on platforms. So there are so many platforms that you can use to connect with new collectors and your existing collectors. Again, keeping it authentic to you is great because it will make it easier for you to do on a regular basis and be consistent, as I mentioned before. I guess focusing on those that suit your personality and the type of content you want to put out is a good way of approaching it, as is, where are your audience and who you're trying to reach. Different platforms offer different things. It's definitely worth highlighting Twitter, as I'm sure you all know, is a hub for crypto. And I highly recommend that you post content to Twitter, probably over something like Instagram, just because that's where most of the collectors are. If you can post to both Twitter and Instagram, that's great, because Instagram obviously is also a very big hub for things. But Twitter is definitely where the crypto community are. There are also platforms like Twitch and YouTube and TikTok. Again, working out a platform that works for you best. So just to give you an example, I was a content streamer on Twitch. That came from literally being a musician and street performing. And when we street performed as a band, that's when we connected to our audience in a really direct way. And we met so many people that followed us from that, much more so than, posting on Instagram or making edited videos on YouTube. So when we discovered Twitch, it kind of felt the most authentic to us, because we could literally just play music online as if we were street performing. So that's kind of an example of just working on content on a platform that was most authentic to us and connected with our audiences the best. And some of these, is worth noting, are monetizable as well. So Twitch, for example, has all these kinds of inbuilt monetization tools for creators as well. The other thing to mention is algorithms. So whatever platform you're using and whatever content they favor, your reach is usually about the time that you spend on the platform and how much you post and how much you're engaging with others. So basically how consistently you're using it. There'll be more on this later, but it's definitely worth thinking about. And I personally struggled to post on all platforms and dedicate, making so much content for everything. So it can be worth thinking about that when you're deciding, where you want to create content for to help, connect with your collectors and market yourself online. Oftentimes it can be better just to focus on one platform over many as well, because as mentioned, you guys want to focus most on your art, and that should really be the kind of first and foremost thing. A note on profiles on each of these platforms, it's worth mentioning to really make it easy for people to find you and purchase your work. So kind of best practices here are kind of whatever your handle is on one platform, if you make it consistent across all platforms, that is easier to find for people. So I could search you on Twitter and then also search you on Instagram, because everyone's got their kind of preferred things. But also having, a link tree that provides as many links to the marketplaces that you're selling works on as possible. Fundamentally, people, like ease and favor that when they're kind of scrolling. So if I land on an artist profile and say, I love using Twitter, and I type that into Twitter, and I've come from Instagram or something, as long as there's like a link, that, I want to buy your stuff on Super Rare. Okay, great. I can click on the link and find your Super Rare link very easily. So just a point on kind of handle and your links in bio. It's worth noting as well, like making your image also consistent, because sometimes people don't look at handles as much, and making your bio very clear and distinct as well, and consistent across profiles. Social media can be very powerful in connecting your audience to your work. So one way I kind of try and describe this is, if you come across, other people's art on a platform, it's kind of great to be able to contextualize that for people. So artwork descriptions are obviously like great on the NFT marketplaces. But if you would like people to follow you on your social media and stay up to date with things, it can be really powerful to kind of provide content that contextualizes that for collectors and gets kind of an insight for them to understand anything from your process or the messages behind your art. So you can use this to kind of express yourself and drive engagement. It's not just about making content, but to help come up with this content, we kind of hark back to those brand pillars I mentioned at the beginning. So for example, if one of your brand pillars is that you are all about 3D modeling or AR, or whatever kind of technique that you use, one idea could be to do process videos behind your artwork and show your practice. These can be kind of sometimes, well, actually more so with digital artists than traditional artists, hitting screen record can be a nice, easy way of delving into that for collectors, showing process videos of how you create, or behind the scenes images of your setup. I remember as a watercolor artist, I had a whole array of cameras and lighting, and honestly, it was quite a nightmare to try and do. But for digital mediums, it can be a lot easier to kind of screen record and create some videos that might tell the story of your art for collectors, and then they can also get an insight into kind of how much time and effort and expertise it can take. So you can generally show a lot of this. Other ideas can be kind of a live streaming of painting, like digital painting, or even face to camera videos or audio discussions or captions about your work, showing behind the scenes of your setup. And then, also kind of within that is, how you release your work. So if you're doing a show on Decentraland or Spatial or any of those platforms, promoting that and getting people to join you there, and creating content around it too. Some good examples of kind of how you can see certain brand pillars expressed in content. So obviously I haven't asked these artists what their brand pillars were, so this is assumptions, but I find Ferocious is all about storytelling, their personal autobiographical journey and their process with digital and physical paintings. So they tell stories face to camera, particularly about community and live events. I think they have a podcast still as well, and they process videos and behind the scenes of kind of Procreate and also kind of canvas painting. And they discuss issues close to their heart as well. But then, you look at someone like Xcopy and their art is kind of linked to crypto commentaries, and you see that reflected in their bio and their posts. And they're this anonymous character, which is kind of much in line with the ideologies of the DeFi world. And so you can see kind of different brand pillars expressed. Looking at some non-crypto crypto art examples. These I find quite helpful. There's an artist called Sophie T, and she's a traditional artist. I actually think she might be releasing an NFT soon. But one of her kind of main, we'll call them brand pillars. Obviously I don't know that for sure, but it's kind of the messages that I take out from a lot of the content she posts is that she's all about not going the gallery route. And she explains this in various kind of face-to-camera videos in her blog posts, and lots of kind of behind the scenes of everything she does in her process. Another one is that she is striving for women to be more accepting of their bodies. She did a whole nude series, and in doing so, she actually did a live event where she painted kind of semi-nude women and had them do a catwalk show. And that was super powerful, but also is kind of a great way to illustrate how, those kinds of themes and ideas about your artwork can be expressed in the content you create and even the way that you're working with your art as well. Another example of non-crypto one is Talia Stanton. So she has kind of blown up on TikTok, and does a lot of posts on there and Instagram. And a lot of her stuff is about helping other artists. So she talks about materials a lot, and kind of delves into her process. She is also about her artwork expressing kind of freedom and release in life. And you see that kind of reflected in some videos that she does. A lot of the time, she'll do kind of audio over process videos, and relates it to kind of the behind the scenes footage that you see is kind of a lot of painting, and kind of expressing her own kind of journey and desires and wanting other people to do the same through her art. And she also has a podcast and various TikTok videos about building a career as an artist as well. And as a result, her audience has grown with artists who also identify with her. So that's kind of, it's just interesting to look to other artists to see how they are kind of expressing their brand pillars. So there's another form of content on socials as well, which is largely kind of resharing other people's work. And that can be an expression of your brand pillars as well. So retweeting and resharing other work that you admire, and communities that you're part of. You'll find if your brand pillars and your desires are kind of naturally authentic, then everything you share will be kind of in line with those pillars that you want to express out to the world. And it's worth saying that resharing other people's work, and kind of being part of communities in an authentic way can also be great for great engagement, because as I mentioned, algorithms do favor being on platforms and interacting with other accounts. So it's worth keeping in mind that this all kind of goes towards building your presence online as well. So engagement. Engagement is really the driver to help more people discover and share your work. And there's lots of kind of key things you can do to aid that. So can be from hashtags, handles, and taggings mean that people can, reshare you in their IG stories. If you don't tag people, then they can't reshare it. Call to actions in your captions are really helpful. So asking people to like or share things. There's often a power in asking people, and it kind of prompts the viewers and your collectors to respond and get involved. Um, there's something called engagement pods as well. So these sound more complicated than they are, but if you know a few artists, you can that kind of you love each other's work and really want to help support each other, just set up a group and kind of agree that you'll retweet and repost each other's and comment and like on them. And like them when you're sharing. It's just a good way to keep up to date with others, but also kind of generate that kind of sharing of each other's posts and support. This can obviously help with engagement on social media too. Um, Collaborating with artists is also great, not just because you might create amazing work, but also it's double the promotion when you're promoting a piece as well. And it's worth also mentioning giveaways. Giveaways on social media, people love these. And you can build in kind of sharing incentives like, tag a friend who would like this. And you can find that really helps people, like incentivizes people to share your work and reach new audiences in doing so. So this is a very important slide for me. I definitely found promoting myself as an artist quite tiring, let's say, at times, and at times it wasn't, but I definitely noticed that there were some tendencies, and often just being aware of your mental health and the possibility of burnout really helped me to keep it in check. So one thing is to try your best not to compare yourself to others. I can't stress this enough. Just changing the conversation to kind of not compare yourself, but try and see like other people's marketing efforts as inspiration that can sometimes help you. But sometimes, frankly, it can just be overwhelming. As can, online communities are literally amazing. And I've met phenomenal people all over the world who are now very good friends who started off just supporting my art. And now, we formed very close bonds. But it's also important to set your boundaries because you may also find that there are a lot of people that want quite a lot from you as an artist. I used to get messages wanting tutorials and lots of lengthy questions about techniques, and it was quite hard to reply to everyone. So you don't have to, give everything everyone wants online, and it's important to set your boundaries. And it's worth also being aware of scams and others who might be ill-intentioned. Despite lots of people being great, there can be those as well, as I'm sure we all know in the NFT space. There have been a lot of scams recently, so just be aware of that as well. Um, Trolling happens. Try and maintain a thick skin. It's really hard, being a visible artist online. You may find yourself on the receiving end of this. I hope that you don't, but it's just important to, as we say, like have a thick skin and try to not take trolling too to heart. So I'm stumbling over my words. And yeah, so overall, I would say that despite the desire to be consistent with messaging, um, it's also important to take time out. Just remember, it's not the end of the world if you're not promoting every single release that you do. Marketing is, part of the job, and it's great to do, but it shouldn't be it shouldn't be as important as your mental health or the art that you create. So just keep that in mind as you are going. As well as social media, I just wanted to highlight email as well, which can be really, really powerful. So I would recommend that you try and build a list of emails of collectors as early as possible. I feel like people who want to be on your email list are probably your biggest fans. So it's worth keeping this in mind when you're thinking about what to email them about. And make sure that you also apply kind of the same brand pillar principles as you do to anything you post on social media, to what you post in emails as well. Emails really can cut through the noise of social media in a way that following people on socials can't necessarily. Yeah, it can be really, really powerful. Thinking about what you can send them as well. As they probably are your biggest fans, it's worth thinking about how you want to make them know that they're really special to you. So what could you offer them over other people, given that they're massive supporters of your work? And then it's also worth kind of publicizing that you have an email list to sign up to, as well. So making sure that you're driving people towards email as well. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. And if you guys want to do an exercise, this is roughly about 10 minutes. Nicole, last time we kind of took 10 minutes break and kind of had a think about each of our kind of brand pillars. And then if you would like to volunteer yours, we can talk through them. We have about half an hour to do so. So maybe should we take a 10 minutes to do this exercise? Just to recap what it is. It's kind of think about 3 to 5 things that really express your art and what you want people to know about you and your artwork. So that's kind of the theme. Do you have any questions before we do this little exercise? If not, let's take 10 minutes, if that's okay, Mathilde.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Anna.
Hi.
For me, it always helps to get a few examples to know kind of which direction to think of. Yeah, I guess you already. Is it like one word, or would it be a sentence? Kind of.
It can be anything. So just to give you an example, so I did watercolor illustrations. I still do.
Mhm.
I still do. So for me, I thought of my brand pillars as something very like handmade.
Mhm.
So from that, I would make sure that I showed kind of my paintbrushes and my palette, and I did process videos. And then another one was linked to I think it was like family. So I did a lot of like very cute illustrations that were kind of animals, which had like characters, kind of like children's book illustrations. So I think it was nurturing or family was like one of the pillars, because that's kind of what naturally came out, but also that's a lot of what I sold were kind of for nurseries. So just made sure that when I was drawing, that kind of aspect was coming into them. And yeah, so those are kind of just some ideas that kind of like came naturally from what I was creating, but some kind of summarized an aspect of the art, and that I could use to inspire what content I posted and what I told people about and what I shared as well. So for example, I would also share other artists who were creating like nursery artworks or like interior design stuff, because I knew that like people were looking for that, but also that my art kind of was inspired by some of that. And anyway, so does that help?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Great.
No worries. Okay, so let's take 10 minutes and let's meet back here. I mean, GMT time, it's 1:30, so let's meet at 1:40. I don't know what time zone everyone is, but basically in 10 minutes. I'll see you then. Hey everyone. So everyone wants more time, or how do we feel?
I think we're pretty good. I'd love to hear what others kind of found while doing this in the past 10 minutes. I found that it was actually quite difficult for me, just taking kind of like a critical look at my Twitter presence so far. Um, and yeah, I would love to kind of maybe open it up and just hear if others are ready to share what they found.
Yeah, just a note on that. Uh, Definitely, it is difficult. I totally agree. But try and cut yourself some slack on it because it's hard to do, and it is also something that constantly evolves, especially as artistic practice evolves and purpose too. So yeah, and don't necessarily feel like you need to kind of criticize your current Twitter presence or anything. Just I guess try and focus more on kind of what you want to put out and what kind of feels authentically like telling people about you and your art. That makes sense. Does anyone want to volunteer any brand pillars of theirs?
We have a message in our chat because our artist Chabeli can talk right now, and there is a list. I don't know if you want to read it, Esme, or you prefer me to read it. I don't know. It's the same for me. And yeah, there is this message here from her.
Oh, great. Yes, I've just seen it. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so Chabeli said, 1, accepting your inner self. 2, use of imagination to craft new worlds. 3, empathy around atypical characters. 4, storytelling as a complement of the visuals I create. 5, human-centered topics, mostly around women, but I like my characters to be as androgynous as possible sometimes. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing those. That's great. And so I guess the next step once you have these is to see how they could inspire what you tell collectors about your work. One thing definitely comes out to me of storytelling as a complement of the visuals I create. That could inspire, for example, an email to your collectors where you write a blog post behind each of the artworks that you create, or you could do them as Twitter threads for people as well. And really leaning into that storytelling component. You could also kind of play with the different ways in which you could express that. So if you're comfortable being on camera, you can speak about those directly, or you could, do audio clips, or you could literally like write blog posts and post them like that. And again, just going back to kind of the original purposes, these are to try to connect more with your collectors, and the more that you put out, you'll find that people who they resonate with will gravitate, and it's the most kind of authentic exchange and dialogue between the artist and people who would like your art. Yeah. Cool. That's great, Chabeli. Even accepting your inner self as well. You could even share, other people's stories of this. It's something I see quite a lot on Instagram. There are lots of kind of inspirational quotes that people love, and if any of them resonate with you, in your desire to kind of express that acceptance, sharing that with other people who are kind of fans of your art, I'm sure they would appreciate those as well. It's just another idea. Chabeli just said, I'd like to be better at speaking to camera. You know, it's sometimes, it's not essential for everyone. And so don't feel like you have to make yourself do it. Again, like if it's authentically something you want to do, then great. If it's not, you know, always do what feels most comfortable. Would anyone else like to volunteer some?
I can jump in. And excuse me if my voice is a bit hoarse. It's 5:45 in the morning where I am.
Oh, wow. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay,
Chris.
so nice to meet you. So one thing I actually noticed is there's when I was trying to think of ideas or brand pillars, and I work in branding as a designer, so there's some crossover there, but I'd never really turned the camera on myself in this way. There were some things that came to mind really quickly, and then others that I realized, wow, this is something that I really think about myself as being like core to what I'm interested in and what I'm trying to communicate, but I'm literally doing nothing to put it out there to the world. So,
Oh, interesting.
so the areas that I feel like I'm just almost without thinking about it naturally, both posting through my own work and then reposting others' work as well, especially on Twitter. One prompt or like I guess pillar was like otherworldly. So my own work and the work that I'm really drawn to tends to be both very vibrant, but very almost abstractly alien in a way. Just it can be very unfamiliar in the like patterns or shapes or just like abstract forms that I find really interesting, but also I find really, really fascinating and like breathtaking in other people's work. So there's a sort of general sense of comfortable unease in a way that I think that tends to sort of
Interesting.
place through the work that I'm interested in, but also the work I try to produce.
That's great.
Another one that I am just sort of like almost an underlying layer is just like futurism and sort of like really bleeding edge technology. So like a lot of my work is AI based, which is, I mean, 5 years ago I couldn't have even fathomed that was like possible. And a lot of the work, to me, a lot of the work that people put out through just creative coding, to this day, I still can't wrap my head around how people are doing that. And so there's a lot of this, again, that sort of like wonderment that can both be through that first brand pillar and that just through the tools and technology behind it.
Yeah,
That I'm
you know, having conversations with people about that is also really powerful as well,
Interesting.
because I'm sure a lot of your collectors probably have the same wonderment and want to know the answers as well. So, you know, you could make that a part of the content that you're posting or the comments that you make or the stories that you tell.
Interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about it that way. Actually, that's helpful. And the last one that like is something I definitely post about a lot is because I'm a Web3 designer. I'm very interested in the sort of like market, not necessarily the marketplace per se, but like the space overall that like NFTs unlock, but like Web3 and its sort of unlock for humanity in general, and this like overall increased area of accessibility for everyone. So it's not always art related, but it is very much connected to the space that we're all sort of working in.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've even reposting interesting articles you read that revolve around that theme could be a way that you kind of indicate that that is inspiring to you on some level, even if it's not a direct kind of thematic in your art, but you as an artist appreciate that, and your collectors probably do as well, because we're all part of this space together. And that could be an idea of how to kind of express that brand pillar.
I honestly, I hope that I hope they do, because if anything, I post almost too much about Web3 design and that kind of thing.
That's hilarious.
But an area that I should need to move into more is like I like pre Web3 world and NFTs and everything, like, and pre-pandemic, really, I was really involved in Vancouver, where I live, in the sort of like music space, like ambient music, live performance, like visuals accompanying live performance. interactive, like in real life, like interactive projection art. And it's something that I don't really, it's near and dear to my heart, like deeply, but I don't post about it almost at all. So that's one area that I know that I can actually, there's such a good interplay between the types of art that I'm interested in and sort of really boundary pushing music as well. And I even work as a design lead for a DAO that's focused around this area, but I don't post about it. So that's, I need to do more of that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And this is stuff that I really think collectors will also be really interested in. It's because it's kind of part of the appreciation I find of art is also knowing where it's come from, or like what contextualizes it as well. So it could be an interesting thing for you to kind of lean into.
Yeah, I think
Does it have an interplay with your art as well? Like, would you ever display some of your art on like with music or anything?
Well, some of it has been like involved teaching an AI algorithm how to create its own ambient music. So it's an area that I've like haven't pushed into as much, but it's like supremely fascinating to me. And I think part of it is that I don't have a background as a musician, so I've always felt like a little less capable of like having a voice there. But social media, everyone has a voice, so like why mute myself, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, great.
But yeah, that's it. That's yeah, this is a really helpful exercise. Thanks.
I find these all really inspiring, by the way, and I find it really helpful to think about other people's, and it can really help you kind of analyze your own as well. Is there anyone else who wants to share? If not, that's totally fine. But yeah, we're definitely here, and if you feel comfortable to. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, can you listen to me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, good. I was not sure if it was gonna work. So, what the ones I picked were about my work. I come from a traditional art background, so I work with ink a lot, and I used to post these videos of just the hand doing the poke of the ink, like tick tick tick, little strokes. That was something I took out from that, and that was cool. So that traditional art part. Then most of my work is SVGs, so it's a peculiar format. It's scalable, so it's XML. I don't know. It can take a place in my idea of what's branding for me or for my work. So the file format, and I don't use to tell about the world, like stuff or people or animals. I just work with, it could be like a semiotic study made in visuals.
I think I understand. So, Santiago, you cut out a little bit, but I think you were talking in the first place about showing your process of the ink drawings, which can be really cool as you're a traditional artist, and that will really help communicate that to your collectors. You cut up a little bit on the second point. Are you able to write that down? About file format. Okay. So is it difficult to post on social media with SGV? Right, SVG.
Anna, your mic is on. Maybe you want to mute it. Mhm.
Okay, so maybe with SVGs you can, if you can keep posting them, that's great. And trying to communicate the importance of that to your collectors as well could be an idea. Oh, that's scalable. That's great. Ah, interesting. Right, I understand. Does exporting them change the artwork? Ah, okay, they're very aware of the format. Okay, that's great. Yeah, it's these things as well, like how many brand pillars you have. You don't need necessarily lots more, but definitely keep thinking about them, and they can evolve as you do more as well. Like the SVG, yeah, cool. Anna, would you like to share yours as well?
Yeah, for sure. And I also had a bit of a specific question about it. I came to like three very strong brand pillars for me. Is
Mhm.
that one of them is that my work is made with code. So I wrote down made with code. And another thing that comes very natural to me is that kind of being a cheerleader to for art that's made with code, and then specifically made by artists from minority backgrounds. So I reshare a lot of work, and it's often from either artists from the global south or women, people of color, etc.
Mm.
Because especially in the kind of usually people who make art with code, they're very underrepresented. And another thing that I wrote down is like bright and optimistic, because my work is very colorful with very bold colors. And I think also in the tone that I talk online, I'm always, I never get into angry arguments online. I always try to kind of keep it uplifted and positive, and kind of more share the good side instead of like sharing very negative things. Um, and yeah, I had a specific question about like Instagram versus Twitter, because with the made with code pillar on Instagram, I really naturally gravitate towards using stories. And I really easily kind of share little pictures or little videos of me behind my computer making my work, and kind of the progress behind it. And that comes very easily to me. But on Twitter, it but I want to show that more on Twitter because I feel that's way more where my collector base is. But I feel always a little bit weird about sharing pictures on Twitter of like
Interesting.
kind of even though I see people doing it, but it doesn't come natural to me. I would also love to hear like your feedback, but also from other people on the cohort. Yeah, just not something I do.
Yeah, no, totally. I personally find that Twitter works really well with images. I feel like it definitely makes tweets stand out more, and it's very eye-catching, and it kind of helps stop the scroll. Like it stops people scrolling necessarily like past things. So I really like those on Twitter. In terms of why you don't post them, is that because with Instagram it feels more natural to kind of pick up your phone and do a 15-second story very easily, whereas like Twitter doesn't have the inbuilt thing to do that? Is that
Yeah,
so
that
with that,
story.
I'd say what
It's
you can
nice.
do is like when you do the story, like you can save it, and then you can save it to your camera roll and then post that to Twitter.
Yeah, and I think I should just experiment with it and try it
Yeah,
once.
because then
Like,
it's kind of like it's easy for you to do. Like
yeah.
you don't have to record something else for Twitter as well.
Mm.
But yeah, and just try experimenting.
Yeah,
Um,
because I do remember once I shared a post that kind of it had the artwork and next to it it had the code, and it just completely blew up so much more.
well, on
It had
Twitter.
on Twitter, it had so
Yeah.
much more engagement than if I would have just posted a picture of the artwork.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I would say definitely like lean into that and explore, and some things, some days it will work better than others. But that can just be like the day or the content or whatever. But do try it out for a couple of weeks and see if it works, and if you're reaching more people. So yeah.
And I just wanted to say, I think you pointed out something really important there about using Twitter to kind of create a diptych of two different images with different information. So what you were saying about the image and then kind of posting it with the code alongside it. Um, with photography, I found that the posts that are the most successful are like behind the scenes. It's just like a mobile photo of the shot, and then you have like the actual image just like juxtaposed right beside it.
Interesting.
And then with AI, I've also seen, and I've done this myself too, where I post one of my own images and there's like an AI version beside it. And I find that those posts, just from my observation, get the most engagement in terms of like replies, likes, and retweets. Like I think that does something there where people are more likely to open up the tweet and do their own kind of investigation. And I think that's really, really great for engagement.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's partly like you're providing like an insight into the work of art that other people won't normally get to see. And so it feels like it's totally normal for you as a photographer to like, what your behind the scenes look like, but most of your collectors, aren't photographers themselves. And so they never get that special insight into the work. So I feel like that's the appeal of why it might be more engaging as well. And you can apply that to loads of different types of posts too.
Awesome, thanks. It also brings to mind an artist I can share in the class. His name is Daniel Cat, and he's always showing like his behind the scene things and always like little shots of his studio. And I always really tune into whatever he posts, I think, because of kind of that peek behind the curtains.
Yeah.
Kind of job. It's just like it's easy to see other people do it and then like doing it yourself.
Yeah. So part of it is like education, for sure as well, for other artists too. Cool. Does anyone else want to share anything? I think we can go for another 5 minutes or so.
Hiya. maybe sharing something, but not necessarily brand pillars. Maybe the lack of them. What I do like sort of animated loops, mostly black and white. But initially, when I started on Hen, they always sort of sat quite nicely next to process art, and I think without having being quite clear about what I was doing, that I did animation, a lot of people assumed it was processed and created by code. So I think it's easy to get lost if you're not quite clear. So I wish I had your advice like a year ago. I think it would have been better.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, I would always think like try not to kind of look backwards, but look forwards and kind of work out how you can adapt moving forwards and hone the marketing as much as you spend time honing your art as well. And everything evolves, and you can.
And it never really bothered me so much. It's just like at some point a collector was stating that he made a point that I should be clearer by stating that it's animated rather than
Okay.
coded, and he thought it was sort of getting lost in a sea of I don't know. So it was quite interesting, but nothing necessarily not regretting it, but something that's easy to forget when you set out on this journey, to have a clear sort of voice with what you do. I mean, the voice can obviously change, and learn a different language or learn different accents or dialects or whatever. But it's so easy to just jump into the deep end without a plan, and then just sort of like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on that note, in terms of if there's any messages that you want to make clear or you think are important to your work as a whole, like using your bios to, clearly state the key messages that you want can really help. Because they have to be short and, it makes you kind of focus on the kind of key points. Or, if you have a website, writing an artist statement is really helpful as well. And kind of making sure that information is there, so that, because those kinds of two things are the two touch points that, if you want to understand what an artist is about, their social media bios or their website kind of artist statement is where collectors will go to, or at least that's where I usually go to. And just making sure that those messages are kind of in those two areas can be quite helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello, Esmay. Can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I can.
Hey. Thank you. Thank you for your time. My name is Ahmad. I'm based in Iran. I'm a 3D artist, CG artist. And I just wanted to tell a little brief about what I do and the pillars of, the experiences I create. What I create is 3D art, motion design, and concept art. And I usually create them to kind of illustrate thoughts about our existence in the universe and to answer questions about life and universe, and actually to make a kind of a meaningful effect on the audience about what in the world we are and what we should do about it. But that's normally how I represent myself. But the thing is that in the real world, things are a little bit different. And I when I talk, more meaningful about my work, some people start to get bored. Some people no still don't have the capacity to think about the meanings. And I should actually kind of filter this out in a kind of a professional way. That's what I'm working on. Right now, as I listen to your presentation, there's a lot I need to think about before I write some pillars for myself. It's I think it's really hard. But my questions are. How can I actually represent myself in a before I get into the meaning, before I get to the things that really meaningful to me about the art I create? How can I professionally represent them? And I have a second question too. Is that when I going to do a drop, I'm not really that much known yet. Um, what should be the approach? It should is it right that I put a link on the artwork that I just released, or is it better that I start to kind of uh, release it first with the some description, and then after some time I start to actually say, okay, this is gonna be drop. How can I manage this process? These are two questions I have about my how I represent myself in the NFT space. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
no worries. So just to understand, do you mean kind of aside from brand pillars, what are best practices when you're releasing a new NFT artwork for promotion?
Yeah, kind of not, before the promotion, what is it, the best attitude toward releasing the work to be genuine, in the space, not to, just want to put the link, okay, this is my link, go buy it. I know things don't work in an NFT space like this. We used to do, incorporated space. Years ago, we used to put a link, okay, this is a product, but artwork is not a product. We used to do that in Web3 and now, Web2, sorry, but now in Web3, it's totally different. But I'm trying to understand this as the time goes. But yeah, I want to know how is the best. What's your advice on how to represent it over time to the people without being overwhelming?
I think I'm understanding your question. So I guess if you were to release a new artwork, um, I think you can start talking to people about it before the auction goes live. Definitely messaging on social media or your email list that your next big release is coming, and giving like a paragraph or key points about the release and why it's important to you, why it's important in the context of your artistic development, and your journey as an artist, and providing some color for it. And then you could do that before the release comes, because that will indicate to people that the release is coming on a certain day, and they know to kind of buy some ETH or Tezos or whichever kind of platform you're minting on ahead of time. And then being clear with the messaging of the auction mechanic, and where they can find the piece of artwork as well. It's all very important, and making sure that you have links to it in your like easily accessible links in your social media profiles, so that it's very easy for people to find. And then after the auction, if you want to continue to talk about those the work, I mean, Twitter Spaces is a really great way of adding color and context to a piece, and a release. And is this kind of answering the question in terms of how to kind of promote the artwork?
Yes, absolutely. I totally get what you mean. My main question is, how can I actually genuinely represent? I think you totally responded to that. But the first question I got was, how can I, represent this in a professional way before I go into the meaningless stuff? I post an artwork. I just want it to be, kind of a mysterious first. No explanation too much, but sometimes. It cannot just, the artwork itself alone cannot just communicate. Like say, you see many, many, many artworks on the internet, and I just wanted to know how I can represent it step by step, in this space. That would be better for me, as I am not really that much known artist. I'm just starting and expanding my communications. I just want to know what is the best step by step to actually represent myself without going too meaningful about the things I
Yeah.
create.
So something else that comes to mind is creating kind of, I call it bite-sized content. So that would be summarized content. So one of the ways that I get towards that is I'll write like a paragraph or 2 paragraphs about what the piece is in detail for me. And then I pull out the kind of key summary points and put those on social media, because on social media it's very hard, as you say, to for people to consume that amount of information. So that can be really helpful. And building a promotional video, that's like 30 seconds or a minute long, that gives people all the messages in something that they can watch. So you can view the artwork and you can talk over the top, or you can put sentences in that kind of contextualize what the work is about, but without going into too much detail. And then, maybe you do that on the promotion on social media, but the artwork description that's on the page when people buy the artwork, maybe that's where you can put more detail in. And then maybe more detail lives on your website, for example. So just making sure that the messaging is suited to the different platforms. So on social media, I'd say like less detail and more kind of summary of the key points that you want people to understand. And then on your website, that's a place where you can, go into lots of detail. And then on the description for the artwork, that's maybe a middle ground where you want to tell collectors like more, but maybe it's not too long because they may not be able to consume it too much. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you very much for your response.
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Matilda, is there anything you would like to add, or?
No, beside of course, thank you for your presentation. It was so helpful. I think also the residents that couldn't be here today will find it helpful because we recorded all this session. So thank you so much, Esmay. As always, your collaboration with VCA is super, super important for us. So thank you so much for your time. If you guys don't have any other question, we can say goodbye to our mentor.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Esmay. Bye.
It was
Esmay.
great. Thank you very much.
So good. Thank you.